The next few weeks became a blur of late-night conversations and stolen moments with Luca. They fell into an easy rhythm, meeting wherever their paths happened to cross. At a bustling square, a quiet cafe, or even at her apartment when he showed up unexpectedly one evening with a bottle of wine and his guitar. It was as if their lives had been quietly orbiting each other, waiting for this collision. One evening, as the rain drizzled against Pia's apartment window, she sat on the floor with her camera in hand, while Luca lounged on the couch, strumming a soft tune. His presence had become a comfort, his music a balm to the restlessness that usually filled her. "What do you do with all these photos?" Luca asked, nodding toward the stack of prints she'd scattered on the coffee table. "Some I sell," Pia said, setting her camera down. "Most I keep. They remind me of where I've been, who I've met." Luca picked up one of the prints, a black and white shot of an old man sitting by a fountain, his face weathered but serene. "And this one?" "He was a storyteller," Pia said, smiling at the memory. "I met him in Granada. He told me about his childhood, about losing his wife, but finding solace in the little things, like feeding the pigeons every morning." Luca studied the photo a moment longer before placing it back on the table. "You don't just take pictures, Pia. You collect pieces of people." His words hit deeper than she expected. She looked at him, unsure how to respond. "Do you ever let people in?" he asked, his voice gentle. "I let you in," she said, a little too quickly. Luca chuckled softly. "Touché." They sat in comfortable silence after that, the rain filling the space between them. Pia thought about how much her life had changed since meeting Luca. She wasn't sure if it was his music, his quiet confidence, or the way he seemed to understand her without needing explanations. Whatever it was, it terrified her as much as it thrilled her. "You never told me what you're looking for," Pia said suddenly. Luca stopped strumming, his gaze shifting to the window. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. "I'm looking for a way to make sense of it all," he said finally. "The traveling, the music. It's not just about freedom. It's about finding something real, something worth holding on to." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Pia felt a pang in her chest, a mix of empathy and something she couldn't quite name. "Have you found it?" she asked softly. Luca looked at her then, his expression unreadable. "I think I'm getting closer." The vulnerability in his voice made Pia's heart ache. She reached out, placing her hand over his. "For what it's worth, I think you're closer than you realize." Luca's fingers tightened around hers, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks, Pia." As the rain slowed to a drizzle, Luca set his guitar aside and stood. "Come with me," he said. "Where?" "Someplace quiet. Trust me." Pia grabbed her jacket, slipping on her boots as she followed him out into the damp night. They walked in companionable silence, the city streets glistening under the street lights. Eventually, Luca led her to an abandoned courtyard, tucked behind an old church. It was quiet, except for the sound of water trickling from a cracked fountain at its center. "This is my favorite spot in the city," Luca said, sitting on the edge of the fountain and motioning for her to join him. "It's beautiful," Pia admitted, her eyes scanning the crumbling stone walls and overgrown ivy. Luca pulled his guitar into his lap, plucking a few tentative notes. Then he began to play something new, soft, intimate, and unpolished. "This one's for you," he said, his voice low. Pia's breath caught as she listened to the melody. It was as if he'd taken all the unspoken parts of her and turned them into music. She didn't realize she was crying until the song ended and Luca gently brushed a tear from her cheek. "Too much?" he asked, his smile tinged with nervousness. "No," Pia said, her voice trembling. "It's perfect." They sat there for hours, talking, laughing, and occasionally falling into thoughtful silence. By the time the first rays of dawn broke over the city, Pia felt something shift inside her. She wasn't running anymore. She was right where she needed to be. And for the first time, she wondered if Luca felt the same.